What really inspired me with the Monarch of the Glen is it's a picture that I've grown up with, and it's always been hanging in the National Gallery in Edinburgh. And ever since starting art around 8 years ago and being a full-time artist now for five years, I've always had this kind of idea of doing something different with the Monarch of the Glen, and obviously I've always wanted to make a stag. It's so symbolic to Scotland. I wanted to do my own reinterpretation of that. A modern take on the Monarch of the Glen and make it Monarch of the Borders. Triangles create the most intrigue and intricate work. The minute I started putting 4 points to a facet, it just wasn't working. I found it boring anyway, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that really invited the viewer to get closer to the work. It's very kind of organic in terms of it's literally, you're cutting every single triangle out of stainless steel. You tack it on the structure you have so far, that is the sculpture, and then you step back and you analyse and you assess what shape has to happen next. And it's very much in my mind's eye that that's where probably most of the work is done. The welding, the cutting, I've decided what has to happen. The work is actually when you step back and you have a think to yourself, and it's almost a kind of silent moment of contemplation, I suppose, when you're looking at what you're making. You're looking at the entirety of the project as well, even though there's literally triangles hanging in mid-air off this base frame, and you have to visualise what you're doing next, and you have to visualise how today's work affects 6 weeks, a year down the line, because every day it affects the direction of the sculpture, how it's going to look. So when you think about it too much, I think it becomes quite heavy, I suppose. You really have to be quite free with it and go with it as well, and trust your instinct. One of the hardest parts about the sculpture is the symmetry found in the head and the antlers and the ears. Symmetry, especially when you have literally hundreds of facets, sometimes very small triangles, you have to mimic that, you have to mirror that on the other side, and that's pretty time consuming. But if I didn't do that, it just would look so wrong. So that's one part of the stag that had to be symmetrical. The rest of it, no two panels are the same. Every triangle is different, every triangle is unique. But if you don't have that symmetry above the neck, the head, the ears, the antlers, it falls to pieces. With this piece, we're going to leave the welds on. For me, I feel it champions the way it's fabricated, and it champions the craft. On top of that, it'll be painted. You'll still see the welds. It'll be like a bronzy kind of colour. We still have to pick out some samples of bronze and see what it looks like and decide the colour. And I think in this day and age of technology, as I say, of course, I utilise it through whatever additions or whatever we're doing. But at the core, this is what we do. This is welding, fabricating, traditional craft. So champion that, leave the welds on, add the X's and the times. It tells the viewer my thinking, the artist, you can see the artist's hand essentially, and that's very important to me. 2 years of work, it's a lot of life, and I realised when I looked at my camera roll on my phone, basically when I started this project, little Arlo came about. But it's funny, as the stag's grown, Arlo's grown as well. It makes you realise how much life you put into something when you see your son, he's just past 2-year-old, and you're thinking, God, when I started this. It's like when I look at the stag's head, I remember Arlo being weeks old. And when I see photos of it now, whatever part I'm working on it, I visualise this 2-year-old toddler. It's like for me, he's grown alongside this mammoth project. I'd like to show this to the public and hopefully inspire, whether you're someone in high school, whether you're you're a young kid or whatever age, hopefully just have a conversation about art, and especially what I'm doing here. And that's the bigger picture for me is, you know, although I'm a welder fabricator to trade and that's how I learned my craft, this is what I'm doing now. You never know what one skill learned today could lead to something completely different in the future.